really important part of decentering men is women going for what they want instead of framing it through the eyes of a relationship. And Jane Fonda is a perfect example that it's never too late to decenter men. Now, this documentary that came out a while ago, Jane Fonda in 5 Acts, if you are in your decentering men journey, this is what, at any stage in that journey, which I think the journey like literally never ends. Because like whack-a-mole or something, a new face of patriarchy will pop up in my life where it's like, like it just, like, it's so deep. It's so deep, y'all. But this is a great example of a woman who had 3 marriages, and then in her like 80s, I think, I forget what age she divorced Ted Turner officially, but she realized that she cannot be in a relationship with a man without losing herself, because none of the men that she'd ever been with would let her be herself. And that by continuing to pretend to be who they wanted her to be, she would lose herself and lie to herself. And then also that those men had something that she wanted to explore herself. So with Ted Turner, it was like the outdoors and nature. That was something she really wanted to go back to. And it was other things too. With one of her activist ex-husbands, like, he was an activist, and she was like, that's what, you know what I mean? Like, these men all had something that she wanted to develop within herself. And then she learned the hard way that, like, she didn't need these men to do that, right? And I say that before I go into more of this, I see this all the time. As somebody who was a climber for a long time, I still climb, but not like I used to. So many women that I met would start climbing because their boyfriends got them into it. Now, what's great about that is a lot of these women ended up like ditching these losers and then going on to create a community of other women climbers or just friend climber group that had nothing to do with these men. And they found a new form of like confidence and empowerment. And they didn't realize how strong their bodies were. And they got connected to the outdoors and facing a lot of their fears and all the great things that come with climbing, as long as you're not doing it recklessly and being a bum like so many men. So when I say like don't date climbers, a lot of times it's like, you know what, if you want to get into climbing, do it for you, not because a man talked you into it. So many women will be like, oh, I want to travel to this thing, and they'll wait for a man to go to those places, and that man is just going to ruin that place for you anyway. You know? One of the things that I'm so grateful for is the fact that I did not date in most of my 20s, right? Like, I didn't have any relationships in my 20s at all. Not in college, not in when I was like living this outdoor life, not even through halfway through my 30s. Now, granted, I did not want children, so I wasn't worried about like finding a dad for these fantasy kids that I wanted to have, because I never wanted to have kids. That took a lot of pressure off it. I will recognize that, you know, being child-free and always wanting to be child-free did free me up from having to find a partner to have kids with. But honestly, at this point, if you really want children, like, that man is actually gonna, more likely than not, become another baby and not help you and actually burden you more. And you'll be a married single mom. So if you want to have kids, just have kids. Like, I know it's not that simple, but as someone who was raised by a single mom, I think she thrived because my dad left. Just saying. She talks about with Ted Turner is that she had to hide parts of herself in order to please him. And she also talks about how she didn't have a democratic relationship with any of these men. And as she said, and like, she would find herself shrinking more and more in relation to men, because not only because she was so socially conditioned to center men and didn't really question it until she would lose herself. And so a lot of it is coming from within her. And she actually talks about this in Grace and Frankie. I love that show so much, y'all. Best love story ever between two women who are best friends. It's still one of my favorite shows ever. But she talks about it in that show where she was dating a guy and she did not know how to date without losing herself, without centering men. And so she just tapped out. Because for some of us, it's so hard, it is not worth taking the risk. And so it doesn't matter how old you are. Like, Jane Fonda is a perfect example that, you know, at this age, she was like, oh my God, I don't need men. She says that when she realized that she was gonna be okay, she never turned back. And then she made this amazing show, Grace and Frankie, about older women making vibrators for women with arthritis. So now she says she's having more relationships that are democratic. And unfortunately, that means that they're mostly with women. Or, she has male friends too. But with romantic partnership and under the institution of marriage, and I think especially with men in her age bracket, it is so many of them are such dinosaurs that they are so far from being able to ever see a woman as having a full humanity and autonomy. And she says, I am most myself when I'm with my women friends. I love the way she just goes into Ted. This woman has such a great way of criticizing this ex-husband of hers without any resentment towards him. But she was like, this man is terrified of being alone. When he is removed from his object of his love, or the woman who, revolves around him, when he's alone, he actually feels like he's getting small. And she was like, this is a really deep, serious problem, by the way. Ted can't be alone. And honestly, this right here is what a lot of women are realizing, is that we can be alone, because even when we're alone, we usually have community and friendships and relationships with our family, because we have been sewing the social fabric for a long time because we had to, and because we were taught to, and also because we weren't indoctrinated with toxic masculinity that makes us be dead inside and selfish and entitled and completely cut off from our empathy. Which, by the way, it seems and I have a nephew, and I believe boys are so empathetic and sweet in general that up until, and it's been, there's been studies on this, until age 5. And after that, the hard-hitting indoctrination begins, and they lose connection with their soul, their feelings, everything. And then, they get bought into the whole power thing, and then it's all over unless they do some serious work on themselves. She said, my whole life had to be about him. Even when she was trying to do a lot of her activism, charity work, and, organizing, she would have to negotiate to be able to leave him because he didn't know what to do without her. And she said, basically, the end of her marriage was because she became more of a feminist and realized, this isn't fair. And I love this line because this was true with me too. I was a raw feminist ever since I can remember, really. When I wasn't dating at all or dealing with men at all, it was easier to be a feminist. But when I started dating, and I'm a late bloomer, I didn't really start dating until my late 30s. And the first dude I tried to date tried to unalive me. So I had to take another break. It's hard to be a complete feminist if you're in a marriage that doesn't quite work. None of my marriages were democratic because I was worried about people pleasing. Talks about how she had to be a certain way in order for them to love her. She had to look a certain way. She was a different woman with each man she married. And that part of her awakening, and again, this is really inspiring because it's never too late, y'all. Part of her awakening is that she wanted to be a living, whole Jane, not having to quiet or even slowly kill the parts of herself that made her Jane. I love this right here because this is just so... She's talking about Ted, but she's pretty much talking about all of her ex-husbands. That realizing the fact that you're stronger and braver than the man you're married to is a hard pill to swallow. When she thought about leaving Ted, it was conflicted because there was a voice saying, and this is that patriarchy voice. This is all of former trauma. This is the voice in our head of all the women in our lives who wanted us to center men as well. Social conditioning saying, oh, come on, Fonda. He's handsome, he's cute, he's schmegsy, and you never have to work again because this dude's a billionaire. It's also strange because Jane is such an activist. It's kind of hard to believe she dated a billionaire, but whatever. Everyone, no one's perfect. And that voice was it's okay. This is the voice that keeps women in terrible relationships. This is the voice that's lighten up. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Be cool. And there was that intuitive voice. That it's like a whisper. I like to say that other voice, the one of ego, patriarchy, fear, all that stuff, is like a voice yelling through a bullhorn with a Harvard law degree. But the quiet, intuitive voice says, if you stay, you will never be authentic. You will never be whole. And that was the moment she decided. Turning point for her, the most profound in her life, where she left this man, because the price of losing yourself, no man is worth that. Let me know if you want a part 2.